And it's wildly diverse, linguistically, culturally, religiously. It's hard to run a country like that for 24 years, whether you like it or not. So an incapable person couldn't do that. He is very capable, and many of you know him, and you know that. What was radicalizing, very shocking and very disturbing for me was the city of Moscow, where I'd never been, the biggest city in Europe, 13 million people. And it is so much nicer than any city in my country. I had no idea. My father spent a lot of time there in the 80s when he worked for the U.S. government and barely had electricity. And now it is so much cleaner and safer and prettier aesthetically. Its architecture, its food, its service, than any country, city in the United States that you have to, and this is non-ideological. How did that happen? How did that happen?
Listen, Americans can and should say whatever they want about the state of our country and compare it to the situations in other countries that we think may have things figured out that we don't. But when you're a self-described hard-nosed, red-blooded, patriotic American that many conservatives claim to be, promoting another country over yours is when they say, well, why don't you just go live there? Guess it doesn't apply to Tucker Carlson's propaganda campaign for Vladimir Putin.
How did that happen? How did that happen?
It's an objective that has captured a major segment of the Republican Party.
How do we bring Vladimir Putin to the table? I think the Tucker interview was very interesting. Again, Putin's a war criminal. He's obviously not telling you the whole truth. He's certainly not talking about his atrocities in Ukraine. But an awful lot of what Vladimir Putin said was right. I mean, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face in some of these sanctions. The greatest threat to America in terms of debt and deficit is no longer being the world's reserve currency. Well, these sanctions are making that day come even sooner as Russia is beginning to figure out how to trade in things other than dollars, starting to trade in the Chinese currency. So listen very carefully to that Tucker interview. I mean, understand, take things with a grain of salt, but a lot of the points that Vladimir Putin made are accurate, they're obvious, and so many of our people here in Washington, D.C. are just ignoring that, making people believe like Ukraine can win. No, Ukraine can't, Putin won't lose. Putin will not lose. He's not going to lose. You have to factor that into the reality if you're going to deal with this thing effectively.
Ron Johnson took seconds to tell a conservative audience that they should take Putin's words with a grain of salt. It was right before he launched into an endorsement-filled speech about how he's unbeatable.
Take things with a grain of salt. But a lot of the points that Vladimir Putin made are accurate.
Elected officials can't acknowledge achievements of fellow lawmakers simply for the sake of getting something accomplished for their constituents. But Senator Johnson finds the Russian leader who invaded Ukraine convincing in his manipulation of Tucker Carlson. But like anything else regarding Trump's Republican Party, Johnson's only following his radical leader's cues.
Of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
And what he said about NATO and sort of the door he opened for Russia and the reaction of world leaders to that you're hearing.
You know, Poppy, it is insane. I mean, it literally is insane. In one sentence, President Trump turned the entire post-war transatlantic security doctrine on its head.
It's not even surprising anymore that the former president would signal to Putin that under the right circumstances, he would side with Russian aggression over the interests and safety of his own country and military. He signaled his loyalty and support for Putin when he sided with him over U.S. intelligence in Helsinki back in 2018, simply because the intel made Trump look bad. It was a direct illustration of how anything that he solely cares about can influence him to disrupt and create world conflicts without a second thought. And like always, his last Republican opponent for the nomination pushed back, oddly after she openly endorsed damn near everything that he did as her boss.
You look at Trump, he goes off script from a teleprompter for 2 minutes, and he criticizes the military, mocks my husband, but he also goes and takes the side of Putin in NATO and says that he would actually encourage Putin to invade our allies. This is what you're getting.
How did that happen? How did that happen?